Hi, so today I'm here with Barry, and so we're gonna talk a little bit about like self-discipline and self-image. So, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you very much for allowing me or for you taking the time out to chat to me today. So Barry Lynch is my name. I'm a mindset coach. We help people create health, wealth, and happiness. And I say that because of it can be different for each individual. I'm based here in Ireland, and I've been in business now 31 years.
Okay, so first of all, I want to ask you, what is it with because my podcast is about like teens mental health, so I want to know what's the difference between like adults seeing themselves like their self-image versus teens and their self-image, because I know a lot of teens have problem with like viewing themselves in a way. So what do you see as like the difference of those two?
Yeah, there probably is a big difference. And the big difference being, I suppose, experience with an adult. As an adult goes through life, they gain experience and then their mindset or their thought process changes. I suppose when you're younger, you want everything to happen quickly and, you think differently. But you got to remember that our thought process and how we think and how we act is a direct reflection of what's going on internally. So whatever your internal thoughts are has a reflection of what's happening in your current world or your current environment. And you've got to remember that your thoughts, your actions, your emotions, your feelings, your beliefs and your behaviors, they were all adapted from when you were born through your ancestors, or in some cases, as you grow up. Because when your parents, you'll probably find that you might be like your mom or you might be like your dad, and then of course your brothers and sisters, they walk, talk, eat, drink, and sleep the same way as you do. And so you have very, very much similarities to them. It's only when you create the awareness around what you do and what you say and think and your thought process. When you become aware of that, well, then you can change it to become anything you want or control your emotions and feelings.
Yeah, and for me, I like to think like when everyone's born, they think like of course we have like different bodies and our families are different, but I would like to think like everyone's born like in similar way, and it's really like our environment as we grow up that really changes us. Because when I was younger, I always thought about like I want time to like go faster, because for me when I was like 10, I felt like I've lived like 100 years, and I
Yeah,
was just really bored and I just really wanted to grow up and like get older and get a job and have kids. But now
yeah.
I feel like time's just going too fast and I wanted to like stop it for a while. And so what's my next question for you is, how does a person manage their self-image? Because for teens, a lot of them have problems with like looking at themselves in a way, in a positive way. So how can someone look at themselves in a positive way?
Yeah, so there's two things there. The first thing you mentioned, we'll get on to the self-image in a second, but the first thing you mentioned is the thought process of somebody. It's a bit like when you're born through your ancestors, you inherit some of your beliefs. And as you grow up, you'll find that, you might have heard like it's a bit like somebody saying the world is round and somebody else saying, no, the world is flat.
Mhm.
So if you grew up in an environment where people say the world was round, well, then that's what you believe. If you grew up in an environment where they say it's flat, that's what you believe. But the beliefs are based on what you have heard over and over again due to repetition. So that's how you form your belief. So if you want to change your beliefs, you only have to change your thought process and do the same repetition and change that. So it's a bit like somebody saying, I'm ill, or somebody saying to somebody else, you don't look too good today. And then they start to feel bad as the day goes on as a result of what somebody had said to them. But if somebody constantly tells themselves, it's like somebody that cleans all the time and they believe a surface is dirty. Why? Because they think the surface is dirty. But if they changed their mindset and said, actually, no, now it's clean, and they kept telling themselves it's clean, it's clean, it's clean, well, then they start to believe it's clean, so they don't need to clean it anymore. So you got to remember it's a thought process due to repetition. And that's what creates the belief. So if you want to change the belief, you got to do something over and over again. Now let's look at the self-image. So that actually works on a similar basis. So it's a bit like somebody, and I can give you this based on my experience. Okay, so this is something that actually happened to me. As I grew up, I didn't like myself. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't like the reflection of the person that looked back at me. I didn't like that I was bald. I didn't like that, my nose was slightly bent. I didn't like my ears were slightly bent. So that's what I focused on. And as a result of that, that caused me problems, because then when I looked in the mirror, that's what I seen. So when I looked in the mirror many, many times, so I didn't like myself. So when I walked by a mirror, I'd look and I didn't like myself. But when you start to look in the mirror and start to see the good and not the bad, and then you start to see it regularly, you come to like yourself. So what you're doing is you're changing your thought process. So if somebody doesn't like the shape of their nose, or they don't like their ears, or they don't like that they've no hair, it's only because they're focusing on that. And it's probably as a result of what somebody may have said to them, and it has stuck with them, because the negative tends to stick. Whereas when I started to change that process, all I did was stand in front of a mirror and say, "You're a good looking guy.
Mhm.
Bald men are great." Now, was that difficult to do? Yes, you better believe it. Because did I believe it? No, I didn't. So I'm trying to convince myself of something that I didn't believe. But as I did it over and over again, I grew to like myself. And when I grew to like myself, I changed my self image. When I changed my self image, the people around me then became better as well, because I didn't see that as being a negative. So to change the self image, you need to have a repeatable process, and you need to do the opposite. It's a bit like somebody saying, "I'm ugly," or "I'm no good," or I'm not a confident person," or "I'm stupid," or "I'm silly," "I'm bad at relationships." Well, the reason why is because of your beliefs and behaviors. But when you change that and you start saying, "Well, actually, I'm not an ugly person," well, then you start to see the good. Because you got to remember, there's good and bad in everything. You can find the bad, you can find the good. It's what you look for is what counts.
Yeah, and I really agree with like what you're saying with like the good and bad, because I did another episode like a few days ago, and I was talking with my guests like the good wouldn't exist without the bad, and the bad wouldn't exist without the good. And
Mhm.
like what you said, like looking in the mirror and saying like, "Oh, bald guys are great," and that's like something I had with myself, because like I'm from Hong Kong, so I'm Chinese, and when I went to other countries, I realized like I look different from a lot of people. And so
Yeah,
then I didn't like that my eyes were smaller because I'm
yeah,
Asian, and
yeah,
I didn't like that I had really pale skin, and I couldn't really like um get tanned no matter how much time I spend on the beach. So then
yeah,
afterwards I would like look myself in the mirror and like, who told me that having like small eyes is like an ugly thing? It's not an
yeah.
ugly thing.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, no one
Exactly.
said being having small eyes is an ugly thing, and no
Yeah,
one said like having paler skin is an ugly thing. So
yeah,
then I just changed my thought process, and I'm not like completely there to like fully accepting myself, but like
yeah,
I'm slowly like starting to change it up and telling myself that, oh, this is okay, this is how I look, and I'm fine with it. Like it's society as a whole who like build a standard of like beauty standards, and no one really set that standard, as in like having a perfect symmetrical face is beautiful. Like no one
yeah.
really said that, and no one said that being Asian or being African American or any other race is like ugly. No one ever said that. So yeah, and when you talked about like growing up in an environment and really like starting to think the way that other people around you is thinking, and for me I thought of like religion,
Yeah.
because for me I have a family, and my family, most of them are Christians, but personally I when I was younger, of course they told me a lot of things about like God and the Bible, and
Yeah.
they mostly tell me like good things. They won't tell me bad things about the Bible. But when I slowly like grew up, researched online and realized there were like inconsistencies, and I started like doubting like what I was actually believing in. So for me, I just chose to really like delay my like thoughts, and for me I would just choose to really make up my mind if I think I belong in a religion or something like that when I'm older.
Yeah. So what you did was you became aware. You became aware of something that you had a belief in, but you weren't comfortable with it. So you opted to change it. But the awareness had to take effect before you could change that. And then you had to do it over and over again to follow through with the process. So it's a bit like when, when somebody goes through a relationship, and maybe it's a bad relationship, it was a toxic relationship, and then they come out of it and then they say, no, that's never going to happen again, I'm never going to let that happen, to find that they end up in another relationship where the very same thing happens. So that's our paradigms. That's because you're comfortable in that situation because of your beliefs and behaviors. So it's a bit like when you sit and watch TV, you probably sit in the same chair and you probably sit in the same position. When you eat your tea or your breakfast or your dinner, you probably sit in the same chair in the kitchen. And that's because it makes you comfortable. So the whole idea is trying to break through the paradigm. You can have somebody that maybe, when they grew up and they may have a bad attitude, they may go through bad relationships, or they have a bad self-image. There are lots of things that can affect their thought process to lead them down the path that they've gone. But it's only when they decide they're going to change it, they've got to change the paradigm. Does that make sense? So they've got to change their habits, their beliefs and behaviors.
And like sometimes, like you said, being in like a toxic relationship, and I think it happens with like a lot of like teens as well as adults, because like when my parents tell me about like their family, of course they're like toxic relationships, and it's honestly happening everywhere, and with my friends as well, and they have like and I have like dealt with like friends that I thought were friends that weren't really
Yeah.
friends, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it takes time to become aware of that problem and then solve it, because I can't really solve the problem if I'm not aware of that problem in the first place.
You see, there's more. You can go deeper into it. Okay. So when we look at our mental faculties, perception, reason, will, intuition, and memory, okay, we've got perception can be your point of view. So if you have a belief on something and somebody says something, well, then you'll react to that situation based on your belief. But if you look at perception and change your point of view on it, well, then you're changing your thought process. So it's a bit like, say, a couple are having an argument, and one of them tends to hit the other, and then you go over and you say, "How dare you can't hit them?" And then they hit you, right? That is you using perception, right? Because of your belief. Yes, it was wrong, but by you going over and saying something, was that going to change the situation? No. So if you can control your emotions and feelings and allow yourself be in a controlled environment, well, then you're in control. But when you allow yourself get into situations like what I said about attitude, where you get involved with something that's creating a bad environment, well, then you're out of control, because you start to say things and do things that are out of control. So it's all about becoming aware and learning how to control your emotions and feelings. Now, you can't do it all the time, but certainly when you're aware of how you can do it, well, then you can control the rest of your life. You can control what happens in your life. You can have wealth if you want it. You can have health, and you can have happiness, whatever you choose.
And I have like a question about how it is to control, because you said if you know how to control like your life, then you can control like your wealth, your happiness, and all that. But
Yeah.
I want to ask, like, how can someone like control their happiness? Like specifically, like
So, yeah,
have
great question.
do it? Do they have like a method to make themselves happy, or is it just something they slowly like learn how to control and feel?
So when we look at whether it's health, wealth, or happiness, or all three, so for some people it can be combinations. For some people it can be one missing. So the first thing we need to do is ask ourselves, what is it that you want? What do you want out of life? We remain in our situations being unhappy or being unhealthy or being unwealthy as a result of our thought process, as a result of our paradigms. So when we change our thought process, we change our habits, our beliefs, and our behaviors. So why not change them to suit what it is that we actually want, not what we need? Because we get up, and you mentioned earlier in the earlier part of the conversation, we grow up, we leave school, we get a job, we have kids, we get married. Sorry, we get married first, probably have kids, depending on whatever. And then we buy a home, we have a mortgage and a car and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then you end up the end of life. But then some people choose not that journey. They want wealth. But how are they going to create that? Well, they've got to change the habits. They want happiness, they want health. So if you're unhappy, well, then you've got to ask yourself, why are you unhappy? What is it that's going to make you happy? I want to live in a, a villa in Portugal. I want to live in the United States. Well, then do that. Go and do it. Create the vision of what it is you want in the future, but start to live it now. You got to start, everything starts in the mind. So maybe you don't have the money now to move to the States, or maybe you don't have the money now to buy that beautiful car. Maybe you don't have the money to buy that beautiful house, but start creating the visualization of what, again, one of our mental faculties, visualization of what it is that you want in the future, but start to see it now, because the mind will bring you towards that. But you've got to create that. So when we talk about happiness, health, or wealth, if you want a combination of all three, well, then build that into your self-image. Create the picture of what you want in the future, but today, start to see it today. It's a bit like if I want to buy a car, I will see myself in that car in a year's time. I'll set a goal for whatever date or time. And then, I might be driving an old banger of a car now, but that's what other people see. That's not what I see. I see myself in that sports car, smelling the beautiful leather, getting out of the car and pressing it and looking at it, seeing it in my driveway, seeing my beautiful house. You create the vision of what you want in the future, but see it in the present tense. And of course, the mind is attracted to what you want. It will bring you. It's a bit like if I said to you, what's your favorite car? And you said to me it was a black Mercedes. Well, then now when you go out today, you'll start to see black Mercedes everywhere. Why? Because the mind's attracted to it.
Yeah.
So why not do that for everything?
And like you said, when if I want a black Mercedes, and I'll start feeling like there's more of them around me, because I'll start noticing a lot more. And I when you talked about um visualizing yourself with that car you want, and
Yeah.
I actually thought about my parents when they were trying to buy a new apartment, and we were in our old apartment, and they were visualizing the new one. And I think that it's also it makes me think of goals, because I'm not the biggest fan of goals, because usually I just can't follow them. But when I can follow them, they're pretty useful, because I have something to work towards and something to look forward to. So
Will I tell you why you can't follow them? Yeah, it's
yeah.
because of your paradigm. It's because you haven't set up an actionable step to allow you to hit your goal. So if somebody said to me they wanted to buy an apartment, and I'd say, right, how much is it? And they tell me the amount. And I'd say, where is it? And they tell me the area. I say, no, whereabouts is the area? They say the area. And then I say, well, where's the block of apartments? And they tell me the block. So see the way I'm breaking it down until they have the full picture of exactly what they want. Now I say to them, what do you need to do to get there? And they say, well, I need to do A, B, C. And I say, well, right, okay, start this week and do A, and then continue on with B, and then continue on with C. So you're setting yourself up for actionable steps to reach your goal. If you're not going towards your goal, well, then you've picked the wrong actionable steps. So it's all about visualization, but it's also all about taking the proper steps. I've seen people that will pick a goal and nothing happens because they don't do anything. You can't just throw it out into the universe and say, I want to have a brand new S-Class Mercedes by the 31st of December, 2022. And then you get there and you go, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yeah, because you didn't do anything to get it. You need to go out and get a job. You need to start earning money so that you'll have enough money to pay for the car. Set up a business.
And that's the thing. I think it's the wrong way of me. I think of it wrong, because I think of the goal, and I just put it in front of me, and I have to get this thing. I have to go there. But
So can I explain something? You
Yeah.
don't have to. That's the thing. So sometimes people pick the wrong goals. If you pick the wrong goal, it won't excite you enough to get there.
Yeah.
If you pick the right goal, you'll get excited. It'll get you out of bed in the morning because it makes you feel good and you're working towards something. So what I always say to somebody is make sure the goal that you pick is correct, but you've got to remember it's what you want, not what you need. You have to fill the need first before you can get the want. But at the same time, don't chase the needs, because if you chase what you need, it's a bit like I have a mortgage and I've got to pay it, but I haven't got a job. So how am I going to pay the mortgage at the end? So now you're fighting backwards.
Mhm.
Whereas if you say, well, look, if I go out and get a part-time job here and a part-time job, now I've got two jobs, now I've got income. Now I'm going to be able to pay my mortgage at the end of the month. Now you've got a solution and now you're working towards your goal.
Yeah, and a while ago I was like I try to like go on runs, like every morning going on a run. And at first it was like really hard because like I'm not used to waking up really early. But then I like did like small steps, and so it's
Yeah.
like I'm waking up first and then like making it like making a really easy step so I can't really turn it down. And then
Mhm.
like when I wake up, of course I'm not gonna go back to sleep because like I'm already awake. So I'll do the next step, which is like to change and to get ready. And once I'm ready, I won't go back to sleep. And so I'll go downstairs. And once I'm downstairs, I won't go back up. I must like go on run before I go back up to my apartment. So for me, my way of like um going like thinking of like a goal is to really like break it down into really small steps so it's easy enough for me to like take the first step and to continue on.
Yes, very good. But what you got to remember is, what was the goal? Was the goal to get up every morning, go out for a run, or was the goal to get fit and healthy? So you were chasing probably the wrong thing. You were concentrating on getting up and getting out and getting running, as
Mhm.
opposed to getting fit. Because when you want to get fit, when you're running, you're going, oh my God, or you wake up, the alarm clock goes off, and go, oh my God, I want another 10 minutes. You go, no, I need to get fit. Boom, you're up. But if you're going, no, I need to get up, no, another 5 minutes, another 5 minutes on the clock, there's no motivation there. So that's why I was saying you got to pick the right goal, and then the actionable steps will follow through afterwards.
Yeah, because running, it's not like for me, I don't like enjoy it that much, but then being healthy and being fit, of course, everyone really wants that. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing with like going to school. I don't like waking up at 5 in the morning, but I like going to school. So I just think about like going to school, seeing my friends, and that's like seeing my friends and socializing is really the thing that gets me up in the morning.
That's it. It's finding the good in something. Like as I said, if we concentrate on the bad, well, then there's no motivation. The negative is there. We look for the positive. There are many different laws, but one, polarity, the law of polarity, there's an up and a down. And it doesn't matter what goals you have or what motivation you have, or it doesn't matter, what you intend to do, or whether you have a good self-image or a bad self-image. There's always going to be negative and positive, always. It's how you deal with it is the important aspect. People can find themselves in a negative state on a regular basis, which is like depression or anxiety, but that's because they choose that. If they start to choose to find the good in something, well, then they can get themselves out of that. Because it's like when you're with your friends, like what you said, you're in good form, you're in a good mood. That's a high vibration. But when you're in bed and you have to get up, well, you're in a low vibration because you don't want to get up.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just gotta. That's why when I talk about controlling your emotions and feelings.
And you mentioned like there's always like good and bad in like situation. And so how do you think someone should deal with the bad? Because um you said like to focus on the good, but should they like completely ignore the bad, or should they like think consider the bad and like deal with it, or should they like deal with the bad and then deal with the good, or like what should they do to deal with the negatives?
Yeah, the negatives and the bad, you just find the positive within it. Because when you find the positive in it, it's going to solve the problem. You're creating a solution to get you out of the bad situation. So whether that's a negative thought process, whether it's something that's gone wrong in a relationship, whether it's you've lost a lot of money, there's no point in focusing on the bad point because it's not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're allowing yourself to focus on that. But will it change the situation? No. If you find something good in it, of course it's going to change because you're now seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So it's putting you in a better frame of mind or a better thought process. So it allows you to move away from it and then create. Like as I said, there's some people will say that, oh, my life is full of negativity. Well, then change it. Start hanging around with people that are more positive. Start doing more positive things in your life, and you will see a dramatic change. Well, the first thing I would say is, change your self-image, change the way you see yourself. What is it? Like if somebody says, I want to run a business and I want to be a millionaire, just say, well, is that what you see yourself now? And they say, no. You say, well, then start to see yourself being in that situation. And then the mind will be attracted to it, and it will give you ideas and the guidance of where to go, to how to get there. But if you're not aware, they pass you by. The thought process will pass you by.
Yeah, and it leads back to like repetition and like you said, like thinking of being a millionaire. So just keep thinking about the end of, if the goal is important for you, then of course you'll feel attracted to it and you'll work harder to get that goal. And when you talked about like surrounding yourself with positive people, and
Yeah,
for me, I think it's really easy for people to get like focus on the negatives and like completely ignore the positives. And
yeah,
like for teens like me, when I have like friends that like finish their tests, and
yeah,
like they just cry about like how bad they think they did. And for me,
yeah,
I just don't really see the point in that, because firstly, the test is already done.
yeah,
You can't
exactly.
change the test. By worrying about it, your score won't go up from you worrying about the test. So for me,
Okay.
like the test is for me to learn about like my weaknesses, learn about how to improve. I'll just um learn from it when I get my test back. When I see my score, it doesn't matter that much to me. I'm just there to like improve myself and not to worry about that number, and to not really like focus on the negative and worry too much about the negative.
Yeah. So for somebody that's doing or heading towards an exam or a test. So the first thing that I would say to them is start to see yourself the day of the test, start to see all the answers coming out, start to see the day you get your results and the being positive, start to see that you've done really well. So this is what I was saying about visualization. See yourself the way you want to see it, as opposed to the way you think. If you think negative, you're going to attract negative. So, if you look at, if you want to be a scientist, what do? You hang around with scientists. Why? Because you learn from them. If you want to be a world and you want to be a millionaire, well, attempt to hang around with millionaires. And people say, oh, but I'm, 16 years of age, I can't hang around with millionaires. Well, then start to go where they hang out. Go to a 5-star hotel where they have meetings and, listen in on what they talk about, and then feel good about yourself being in that environment. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you want to drive a Porsche, go to a Porsche garage and get into Porsche and see what it feels like, and get excited about it. If you want to live in, the hills of Florida, well, then go to Florida and see what a house looks like there. You
Mm-hmm.
know, feel it. You've got to create the emotions attached to what you want, because then you'll start to remember it, and that's what will draw you towards it.
And it's like for me, it's surrounding yourself with people you like surrounding yourself with people and you like their ways and you like who they are, and basically you want to be like them, not exactly like them, but then like surrounding yourself with an environment you like. And for me, it's just like that contagious energy between people. And for
Yeah,
them, because it's quite easy for someone, like you can be having a really good day, and someone who's having like a really really bad day comes in and whines about their day, and suddenly you feel down too. And so it's
yeah.
important to have like, of course your friends are going to have bad days and you're there to like help them, but at the same time not get too affected by like their negative energy.
So I found a technique that works really, really well for anybody. So be it somebody that is surrounded by negativity, and they feel uncomfortable in that situation. So I would normally say to somebody, well, if you find that you dislike when you're talking to somebody and you find that it tends to suck your energy out of you, or you're exhausted after meeting this person and, when you leave, I tend to say to somebody, just pick a song that you like. And whilst they're talking, keep singing the song in your head, because the song makes you feel good.
Yeah.
So whilst they're talking, you're half listening, but you're listening to yourself, with the song. And it keeps you up in a high vibration. So when you leave the conversation, you're not exhausted because you're still in your high vibration. But the person in the environment thinks you have listened to them. So you've got the best of both worlds.
And I'm a person that can like multitask really well, so that'll work like really well for me, because like I can listen to the person and think of a song and like hum to the song. And so it's really nice because it does help a bit when I talk to people, because I'm not always the best with talking to people, so it's nice to have like a way to talk to them without really having to think too much.
Yeah, look, it really is. It's all about the training the mind, as I said, to create the emotions and feelings of how you want to be,
Mhm.
not what you have to be. Because again, your emotions and feelings are as a result of what you inherited from your ancestors and as you grew up. No disrespect and nothing got to do with our parents or anything else. They just inherited them from their parents and
Mhm.
it just went back through many generations. But it just means that you can create the environment that you want and
Mhm.
you can create the life that you want that could be different, significantly different than what you currently have. And again, that can relate to your happiness, your health, or your wealth.
Mhm.
It can create, if you're not happy with, you're not earning enough income or you can't get a job. Well, then you got to ask yourself why. It's because of the way you're thinking. If you go to an interview going, no, it's there's a recession and, we can't get a job. There's no jobs out there. Well, guess what? There's never going to be any jobs out there. But if you say to yourself, I'm going to find a job, I bet you I will find a job. You will find a job.
Yeah. And like I I really like how you talk about like the thought process, because like for a lot of people they just feel like um our thoughts, like they don't matter as much, like they can't make a big change. But honestly, for me, if you think of something the right way, you can change a lot of things in reality.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately we have a few minutes left. So thank you so much for joining me and like talking about like our mind and how to like control our thoughts.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.